Welcome back to another episode of United for a Healthy Stoughton. My name is Stephanie Patton and I'm the Prevention Coordinator for the OASIS Coalition. And today we're going to be talking about marijuana. And so I have two special guests with me here today. All the way to my far left is Chief McNamara from the Stoughton Police Department. And immediately to my left is Chief Carmichael from the Walpole Police Department. And we're going to be sharing a little bit about what's going on with marijuana locally, and then Chief Carmichael is going to talk to us about what's been happening in Colorado and also some issues and things that are coming up in Massachusetts. So to get started, we thought we would just talk a little bit about what we know here in Stoughton. So actually, if I could ask for those slides for a second. Great. So just really quickly, just to put some things into context for folks. We've been measuring our alcohol and drug rates at the high school for a number of years, since 2005. And one of the things we've been noticing is that unlike our other drug trends, which are trending down, marijuana has been actually starting to track up a little bit. And we have a few reasons why we think that's happening. One of them is that we know that kids perceive that their peers are using rates of marijuana and also alcohol and prescription drugs at rates significantly higher than what the truth is. So in the orange bars, you see what our actual drug use rates are at the high school. They are well below 50%. Most kids are making great choices, but they believe that most of their peers are actually using drugs, and that can create peer pressure for kids to use. And the other things that we're particularly concerned about with marijuana locally is that kids think that when they think about their parents and whether their parents believe that marijuana use is harmful, they, compared to other drugs, they think it's that their parents believe it's significantly less harmful. So this is their perception of messages that they're getting from their parents. It doesn't mean that's what parents are saying, but it's sort of the way kids are hearing it for sure. And also in terms of whether they believe that the drug itself is harmful, you can see that only 38% of kids at Stoughton High think that there is a risk to using marijuana compared to alcohol, prescription drugs, and cigarettes, where most kids really do believe those drugs are harmful. And finally, the other thing that is also concerning is that of kids at Stoughton High who drive, 20% of them have actually reported driving under the influence of marijuana in the 30 days prior to taking the survey, which is more than kids who report driving under the influence of alcohol. And we know that that's a concerning and dangerous behavior. So I'm going to ask the Stoughton chief a little bit to tell us a little bit about other things she's hearing about locally with marijuana, and then we're going to turn it over to Chief Carmichael.
Thank you,
so go ahead. Yeah.
Well, I would have to say that I think some of the concerns that you brought up in your slides would be the fact that the kids have the perception that parents don't necessarily have a problem with their kids using marijuana, and adolescence and peer pressure, that influence of maybe their parents looking the other way or not necessarily being as strict on the use of marijuana is a concerning trend for us. You've seen over the 10 years that you've done the surveys with the marijuana usage, that increase is what we're seeing within the community also. The decriminalization that took place in the state of Massachusetts has had its effect on the criminal justice system, on the use of marijuana, and then people getting behind the wheel of a motor vehicle and placing people in danger in that sense. It's not looked upon the same way as driving under the influence of liquor, and that concern is the enforcement of that and people being victimized in car accidents. In the Stoughton Police Department, we have one officer who is certified as a drug recognition officer, and again, that officer doesn't work every single day. So when we have a significant car accident, we had an officer had to come in for a DRE examination on an individual that was charged with drug driving in a pretty serious accident, and that's something that is a cost to us. And then the further cost to the town would be the training of the remaining officers that are not trained. Currently, all our officers are trained in the police academy for OUI training, and there's field sobriety tests that they go through, and it's a lot more extensive for the DRE. And for us in the community, people drug driving or OUI driving is a major concern for the safety of the people in the town.
Right. Terrific. So I'm going to, Chief Carmichael had the opportunity to go to Colorado, and he came back with some things to share with us, including some video footage and some things that we have on the table. So we're going to turn it over to him too, and then we might interject and ask some questions as we go. So I'm going to give you the floor.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. And so the first thing I'll go over with is this item here is an ounce of marijuana. So after we decriminalized marijuana in 2008, this is basically what we allowed as a decriminalized amount of marijuana. And as you can see, it's a pretty large sum of marijuana for personal use. I mean, technically you could make about 20 joints with this, 1 ounce of marijuana, or you could create about 5 grams of oils, butane honey oil from that extracted marijuana plant. So some of the other things we have are, these are just basically edibles. We have a brownie, which is basically a pop brownie that's infused with THC. We have a chocolate bar that's also infused with THC. Some Chiba Chews, which are basically just like these little chewable candies. We have some gummy bears, which are basically, they resemble your typical gummy bear that you'd buy in a candy store. So these are basically the same thing, except those are also infused with THC. And one of the problems with these edibles is that THC is the active component that's in marijuana. It's the psychoactive substance that produces the high. And where Colorado regulates the THC levels that are in these products, they can only do so with a range, because when we say that they're infused, they're basically, these gummy bears, for example, would be laid out on a tray and they'd be sprayed with THC over the candy. And doing so, they really don't know the actual content of THC that's on each particular piece of candy. So what they do is they regulate it in a range, and these particular gummy bears have anywhere from 18 to 30% THC. Now that's a significant range of different potency and toxicity that somebody would be putting into their body. The problem that they have in Colorado is with kids that use these things, may have, it gets into the hands of our youth and they have a gummy bear and they don't seem to see any effect on it for some time. It takes a little longer when they ingest it through eating it. And ultimately what a lot of kids do is they take more, and they, whether it be candy or brownies, and they consume more of that product, and now they've consumed a lot of THC, and to the point where kids have been hospitalized and even quote overdose. So major problems with these things. This here is just a marijuana joint, and this marijuana joint has 21.9% THC in it, and it's basically your average rolled marijuana joint.
And what would be typical, if people are thinking about marijuana as plant material and what they usually see, how much THC would be in a joint that you might confiscate from somebody?
So, well, back in the day, 30 years ago, you'd see 2 or 3, maybe 4% highest THC levels. 21% is much higher than that.
Right.
And because of plant selection and cultivation techniques and that sort of thing, and dealing with different strains, they're able to manipulate that THC level. So now you can have a marijuana joint with that high of amount of THC, which is again very concerning, because that's the potency that's in that product. So this here costs about $13 in the store with the tax that you pay out there in Colorado, which is about 27%. So these are very concerns for us in law enforcement, because we feel that the biggest issues that we're dealing with public safety wise are in most communities are the drug issues, the addiction issue that we're dealing with, and the ancillary crime that comes with it. So that's why we're getting out there and trying to educate the public on these types of things.
Great. And what would happen if I had this in my house and I left it out and my toddler had one?
And that exact scenario has played out many times out in Colorado and other places that have legalized it. They would have to be hospitalized, most likely, call poison control. You'd have to call 911 and get them to the emergency room. As you know, now Colorado, what they do is they track the unintentional exposures to this stuff, and they've seen a dramatic increase in the amount of people that are accidentally ingesting these products. So,
And there's an increase in overall, even adults, not accidental overdoses in Colorado also with the marijuana usage.
Because they're not used to that type of potency
Yes.
that they're experiencing.
correct. You're right. In the same sense that you would consume several of those. They come in 10 milligram servings.
Yep.
So each one of these is 10 milligrams.
Each individual gummy bear.
Correct.
So I'm only supposed to eat one gummy bear.
You're supposed one
Okay.
gummy
Which
bear
I would
is a
never in
serving.
my life do if I had gummy bears, right?
And the same thing is with the cookie. You'll see like the marijuana cookies or the brownies where one cookie is actually 4 servings. So if somebody eats the cookie, which I would do if
Right,
I
right.
get
If
cookie
you
in
had
my
a
hand, I'm gonna
cookie,
eat
yeah.
the whole thing.
Right.
You're actually consuming about 4 servings of that product. And,
Okay.
you know, I don't know how many people out there actually read labels when you're eating a cookie, but
Right.
that's part of why they have that issue.
Right. Now I know you have some video footage and stuff for us too that you can share. So
Yep.
I don't know if you want to, or you
sure.
can
So-
do as much of this as you want. Yeah. Oop, there we go.
So this first slide is just because why are we here, why are we having this discussion? And what it really comes down to is, like I said, the addiction issue and the ancillary crime that we deal with in public safety is our top priority. And the reason why we're here is to make sure that we help prevent our kids from having access and availability to this very potent drug. And I know some people out there don't have that responsibility. They don't have to worry about that. But as far as you know, people like you who are involved in prevention and these education awareness, and people like us that have to deal with this on a daily basis, we think that this impact could really be negative on our state and on our communities. So that's why we're here trying to deal with this situation. So this next one here is a BHO extraction explosion, and that is basically, it happened very quickly, but what you have here is several individuals that are creating shatter, which is an extracted form of the marijuana plant, and they're making concentrates from the marijuana plant. And as you can see, that individual sitting down at the table has some type of a heating element, like a hairdryer, and he's drying the product, the shatter. And when the other individual opens the door, it brings in some oxygen, and basically it blows up the scene there. And you can see that they're actually on fire. So that's a major concern. If you haven't noticed, around Massachusetts, we've been having issues recently with extraction labs where homes have actually blown up.
Right.
We had one in Medfield. We had a situation in Tewksbury. The other day, there was the police in Westford did a search warrant on a home that had these extraction labs in the homes, and that's what we're dealing with. Once medical marijuana came along, and now the thought of legalizing, we're basically allowing cultivation and processing of these materials, and it causes for a very dangerous situation.
It should advance. There we go.
So this here is just, and I apologize for my video abilities. It's moving pretty quick, but this is one of the Colorado sites I visited when I was out there. This particular facility is 110,000 square feet. It's as big as the Walpole Mall is the only thing I could think of that's around here about that size, but it's quite extensive, and they measured their yield in metric ton. So that's tons and tons of marijuana that come out of this site. This is just another shot from a different room. And again, this is what's coming to Massachusetts. We do have the medical marijuana facilities that are out there right now, but with the thought of legalizing and commercializing marijuana in November, we would be adding many locations throughout Massachusetts. In fact, there's 75 that are listed in the proposal. So this is just a medical marijuana update. We have 6 dispensaries that are open right now. There's about 25,000 patients. There's been over, at this point, there's been over 30,000 active certifications that are out there. And as you can see, some of those physicians, it's 149 certifying physicians, and some of those in particular have had over 5,000 patients themselves.
Wow.
So one of the things is the unscrupulous doctors, these doctors that don't have a bona fide relationship with the patient and they don't even see the patient are giving these certifications out to marijuana patients. So this here, that's just the front of a dispensary out in Colorado. Now you'll notice that that particular dispensary has medical and recreational. As you can see, you can barely see it, but on the right you'll see the medical symbol, and then on the left is the 21 recreational. This is what's going to happen in Massachusetts as well, because the proposal that we're looking at coming forward is that the dispensaries that are already there will get first crack at being a recreational facility too. So where, this was all about patient access and medical ability for people to seek medical marijuana.
Right.
Now we're talking about these same facilities now are going to become recreational dispensaries. And they'll have, like I said, they'll have first crack at opening up as a dual type of location. Now in Colorado and Massachusetts would be the same. They have 27% tax on recreational, but only 3% on medical. In Massachusetts, we would have 12% on recreational and 0, we don't have any tax on medical marijuana. So what happens, what's the effect? Well, you can get a medical marijuana card quite easily, and you just basically apply and get the medical marijuana card and circumvent the tax system. So what is proposed, the picture on, what is proposed, and you guys jump in at any time.
Okay.
But this is...
Chief Carmichael, so one of the things that we'd be looking at with that tax rate would be the black market increasing.
Correct, yeah. What basically has happened, the proposals basically will say that we're going to rid Massachusetts of the black market, but in fact we don't do that. We actually create a gray market where people use the system to now, under the guise of recreational, to cultivate and grow their own, and then they distribute it out. So the whole argument of the black market, it actually gets worse. It doesn't get better. The items on this next slide are shatter. That's what, when you saw that explosion back there, that's basically what they were making. That's extracted THC that can be smoked. And now basically this type of material would have very high THC levels in it, 80 to 90% THC, which is very potent, much more even potent than the gummy bears and the stuff that we just showed. But in this proposal, it allows the cultivation and processing of marijuana, the selling of paraphernalia, a legal age limit of 21 years and older. It would be regulated, and we would tax the proceeds. As far as possession, you could possess up to 1 ounce outside of the home and 10 ounces inside, and cultivate up to 6 plants. Now, the problem with some of these regulations is that there's nobody that can enforce it. There's no enforcement mechanism that's going to be out there that's going to go knock on someone's door and make sure they actually have 10 ounces or 10 pounds. And now that we've decrim and we've had medical marijuana, law enforcement is almost out of the equation. There's not much more we're going to be able to do if we continue down this path that we're looking at right now. So, and they could also give away 5 grams of concentrate. So this ounce of marijuana here, for example, if you extract the oils out of this marijuana, you'll generate about 5 grams of concentrate. And so you can give this away. I can give this to you.
Like as a gift.
As a gift. So dealing with the distribution part of it, party A giving it to party B is very difficult for us to try and enforce that as well. So again, law enforcement's going to be pretty much out of that equation. There would be a Cannabis Control Commission. Now, this is kind of funny, but the Cannabis Control Commission would be from the industry, people that are actually involved in the industry helping to make some of the rules. And, that's probably not the best idea and if you want to really regulate something. So the tax issue, up to 12% total. Like I said, 75 dispensaries, and that's pretty much what we'll be looking at. This picture here is just another one of the at the cultivation site in Colorado, and I basically just knocked on the door and asked if I could go walk around, and the guy let me in.
And you're a tall guy. Those are
showed
some
me
big
around.
plants.
Yeah, and what they can do is now that those are probably 5-foot plants, but they've been able to develop the strain so that that's as high as they have to go. They don't have to go 8 feet. They can do it. They can actually manipulate it to be that small. So, what are we legalizing? We're not legalizing just marijuana, like this plant material. There's a lot of other things that are associated with this, and we're talking about butane, honey oil, your shatter, the dabs, the butters. Those are all different types of concentrates that they're able to develop from the marijuana plant. And like I said, very high THC levels, 80 to 90%, very potent, very toxic form of the drug. And I think what most people feel is that that we are just legalizing this plant, the plant material of marijuana. So those are just some of my the things that you see here out on the desk. Not a very flattering picture of me, but I'm at the this is a THC extraction lab that's in the cultivation site. So all of the gases are going into these tubes, and they're extracting all the oils. And then next to this location would be the kitchen, where they're actually making brownies and gummy bears and all that stuff. So treating it like alcohol, you'll hear that a lot. If we look at our legalized substances right now, alcohol and cigarettes, they're about 50% and around 25%, and only about between 6 and 8% of the population actually uses marijuana on a regular basis. So what happens when you legalize it? You increase access and availability. You have to believe that those use rates, the amount of people that are using that drug, are going to skyrocket. And if just, let's say, for example, it's as much as alcohol, then now you have half the people, you have 50% of the population using marijuana, or maybe 50% using alcohol. And as you just said, even in Stoughton, use rates for marijuana have been increasing, and now if you throw this into the mix, you know, Colorado has the highest use rates in the country for our youth, and we're at like 10th, so I don't think we need to move to number 2 or number 1. But you know, we can't treat it like alcohol because it's $250 to $400 an ounce, just like on the street in the black market. You can't. They're going to keep the price the same. It allows cultivation, and you know, I have that one thing in there about the war on drugs. There's no war on drugs anymore. It's not the police versus everybody else. It's people like us. You know, prevention. And education and awareness and enforcement's part of that. You can't have all of that without having some enforcement. But we're dealing with a drug epidemic, and it's going to take all of us to try and deal with that as communities. And the war on drugs is, you know, from crack cocaine years, and that's gone by the wayside now. And we have a lot more other things to focus on. So
right, I think we, and you know, even certainly here in Stoughton and in other places, we've been talking a lot about that partnership with the police department and you know, folks who are struggling with addiction, and how are all of our public service agencies really helping agencies. And you know, we don't want more folks addicted to drugs because for lots of reasons, obviously. But you know, it's such a difficult cycle to break. We were at a presentation this morning with 8th graders learning about some of the challenges there.
yeah.
In the regulation, you know, the community overall has to take a stand to be a part of the education, prevention, and getting together to work on this epidemic, whether it be heroin, marijuana use, alcohol. It's a community effort that has to take place. And, you know, together we can work on this and accomplish great things. And hopefully in November, we'll be looking at a different outcome, but with education is the only way we're going to get that outcome.
Yeah, I think some people want to take the stance that, you know, like the overdoses and the issues that we're dealing with opiates has no relation to marijuana issues. And yeah, the pharmaceutical side of it and unsafe prescribing is part of it.
Right.
But what we find in our overdoses, specifically in Walpole, is that we deal with people with long-term addiction, kids that had early onset of marijuana use or alcohol use or tobacco use that kind of set them on that trajectory towards ultimate opiate use. It's not all just pharmaceuticals. Marijuana takes a role in the addiction problem that we have. 1 in 6 kids becomes addicted to marijuana, and we're not going to get into the adolescent brain and everything right now, but that has an impact when they're introducing these substances to a young brain.
Right, and certainly as a prevention coalition, OASIS's focus really is primarily on young people, and I know that as police officers, you have to deal a lot with the adult population as well. So I think it's exactly what you're saying, is we're trying to do that prevention work up front, trying to reduce the number of kids who get into compromising situations, make choices that lead them down that path where they're still struggling with drug issues, and not necessarily just addiction, but just poor choices that lead to things like car accidents and other injury, which doesn't require addiction to happen. It just sometimes it's just too much. We're looking at products with really high potency, so it wouldn't take a lot to inadvertently have too many gummy bears, for example, and think you're fine behind the wheel of a car, right?
Yeah. So in closing, really, like the term regulate, we'll hear that get thrown around a lot, and we regulate alcohol, we regulate pharmaceuticals. We regulate tobacco, we regulate all these things, but they're very widely abused. And that's where we have the problems, when people take substances and they abuse them. So I don't give too much credit to that term when you hear that, because I think they want us to identify that as safety, and it's really not. But the black market issue, out in Colorado, I saw it firsthand. The drug dealers didn't pack up and go home. They taken advantage of it. And the fact that we thought about getting rid of the punity part of it, of this drug being prohibited, and that less people would be arrested and less people would be in jail because of marijuana. Well, the opposite is taking place as far as that's concerned as well. And the most common place that's taking place is in the poorer neighborhoods, the minority neighborhoods, where people are also taking advantage of this law, the gray market. They're cultivating and selling marijuana. And way outside of the purviews of the law, and now they're being arrested and prosecuted, and so that also had a negative effect on what it was supposed to happen out there.
Right. So Chief McNamara, I'm going to give you the final word. Is there anything else you want to add to our discussion today?
I think the biggest concerns would be some of the things that we talked about today for the state of Massachusetts and the upcoming big vote. Supply and demand is not going to change with regulation, what they call regulation. And the concerns would be for products like this and youth and adolescents getting a hold of things, and their increased use that we are already seeing over the last 10 years in the town of Stoughton. So prevention is and education is where it's at.
Thank you so much to the two of you for being here today, and we'll see you on another episode of United for a Healthy Stoughton.
Thank you.